Hello and welcome back to Shelf Centered. This is Bryce. Thanks so much for stopping by. Thanks for liking and subscribing. If this is something you end up enjoying, you never know, it could happen. Hey, this is my news for the week. I've kind of changed it to a Thursday news day. It just seems to make sense. Tuesday seems to be taken, and I didn't want to crowd that up for news. I'll do my own day, which is probably a day that everybody else does it too. So who knows? But I've kind of switched it up. This is my news as it relates to fantasy, science fiction, sometimes horror, mostly as it relates to books, but also media. Today we've got a healthy media news day. We've got some news today, so we got to jump right into it. But just so you know, the George R. R. Martin stuff, he did release some information, and then it got taken down by presumably HBO, but I don't think anybody actually knows that. So we'll talk about that though in the medias, which will happen later on in the video. First off, Wind and Truth. Oh my gosh, we have an actual cover. Last week I did announce that the cover was imminent for the fifth book in the Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson himself. The book is coming out this December. We got this teaser forever, and it just kind of was a blurred copy of the cover, and then we just didn't get anything for a while. So, presumably it was, they're just messing with us, but it was an actual, the artist himself, Michael Whalen, kind of pulled back and said, I need to fix some things. But literally the timing was just perfect. And this is the problem with having a news show is that as soon as I uploaded, literally it was in minutes. It probably came out right before I actually uploaded, but I had literally just been looking just to make sure, and it wasn't there before I finally got things put together and edited and everything. And we hadn't had a cover, but now we do. So it was literally the moment that I posted the video last week. So I'm sorry, I am super late now with this news. But luckily it wasn't the whole video, but it was just kind of funny to me. Man, I am bad at this sometimes, so I apologize. But the Wind and Truth cover, I actually really like it. I like the vibrancy of it. The colors look really cool, the clouds and everything. I think especially when you take a look back at the whole cover, looks really cool. I heard people saying it was their least favorite, but these are of the top tier, very good covers in a series. Michael Whalen doesn't really do bad covers, but in me, I'm sure someone could find something, I'm sure, but for the most part, I usually enjoy them. I still think Oathbringer is my least favorite, and honestly, Rhythm of War I liked less than this one too. So I really like this. I like I don't know, like I said, the colors really, I like that kind of vibrancy. I like Words of Radiance has a really good cover kind of like this, so it speaks to me. So anyway, super late now on that news. Thank you very much. All right, then we've got Jay Kristoff news, Empire the Vampire. That's kind of been his latest series. It's been a very popular series, especially on the booktubes, and I've not read it yet. I hear good things, but Empire the Vampire #3 apparently is finished. The author himself on X/Twitter was announcing this, and he did say it's the best book he's ever written, which is pretty good. That sounds good. I do feel like authors have this tendency to think whatever they've recently done is the best because it's new and shiny and all that. Anyway, but it probably is, and I don't mean to throw shade on him. I'm sure it's great, but anyway. That's pretty good news, especially when someone's saying it's the best book they've ever written. At least someone thinks that. Then we've got Kickstarter news. Kickstarter Unavowed, the anthology by Sean Speakman. It looks like it's got some good authors in it. Sarah Shorn, I know, is one of them, who I follow. Anyway, go check that out. Speakman's done some really good anthologies. The Unfettered, I think 3 of them. It usually has some very, very high tier authors related to it, so it's pretty cool. And anyway, so go check that out. Then we got a couple of cover news, cover bits of news. This is John Scalzi, When the Moon Hits Your Eye. It's an interesting cover, not my favorite of all time, but it's apparently a pretty satire-y type book, the moon turning into cheese. I feel like even just announcing this news that I have to fact check it and go, Are we just, it's like, you have to check the date. Is it April 1st? Is this a joke? Am I being played? Is he trolling? I don't know. But it does seem real unless I edit this out. So we'll see. Another cover news, Luke Tarzian has got a new book coming out, and I apologize if I mispronounced your name. I have been friends with Luke for a while on Twitter/X, and then I realized right now that I don't know how to pronounce his name, so I apologize for that. But House of Muir looks like it's not only got a cover and it looks great, and he does his own covers. That's what I think is so cool. Authors that do their own covers and make them look good. You know, you kind of have to have both. I think these look absolutely splendid. I own the first book. I definitely will be buying House of Muir. So anyway, check that out. He says, the author himself says it's for fans of like Erickson. I think that's pretty cool news. So anyway, go check that out. All right, then my last bit of kind of writing related news, kind of am sticking it on the book section before we get to the medias, which is kind of healthy and packed in. NaNoWriMo, I just, again, learned of this. I'm just reporting the news here, okay? If you don't know what NaNoWriMo is, it's the November book competition where you write a ton. And so you're essentially trying to write a whole novel in the space of a month. I believe it's like 50,000 words or something you're trying to get in 1 month. I could be wrong on that, but that's what sticks in my mind for some reason. But they have an announcement related to AI, and it says essentially, and I might get this wrong, and I'm trying to report as best I can. I'll probably pop up what they actually said. AI is okay to use for NaNoWriMo because to categorically condemn AI would be to ignore the classist and ableist issues. I'll be honest, I don't feel like it's classist or ableist to be against plagiarism, to AI as it relates to the arts. I just don't love, and I get it's this cheap, I guess, way to do a cover or to do, I guess, some part of your writing, which just is crazy to me. But I don't get how it's like, yeah, it's easy because it's taking from other people. It's not necessarily writing its own thing. That's how AI works. AI isn't, at least to the levels of science fiction that we read and love, like actually creating things on its own. It's stealing from things. Anyway, so I thought it was interesting that they, again, kind of take this like high and mighty approach to this. Writing is like, I feel like as classless as you can get. You can take a pencil and paper. You could take all kinds of things and write. I mean, most people do have computers, but we have libraries now with computers. Like, you have the ability to get to something to be able to write. And I feel like you can even track down things to be able to write on or with quite inexpensively, and if not free. And I get this, there's this whole push for AI. In my line of work, I kind of actually understand using AI. I mean, you might be appalled at the sheer amount of lawyer work that's copy and paste, because frankly, we do a lot of similar motions when it comes down to it. Or just, I mean, if I'm doing a notice of hearing, I'm gonna use the same form that I've used 100 times to do the new notice of hearing, change the date, change the judge, maybe a couple other changes, obviously the header and stuff, but you're basically using the same form over and over and over again. AI kind of makes sense in some of these, like in my line of work. Nobody's caring if one, it's not very creative for the most part, and no one cares because you're making law arguments, legal arguments. That kind of makes sense, but in art, where I just like pushing boundaries, all these things, like I don't know. I just don't love it. It's icky to me at this point, and I feel like mostly it's because of the plagiarism aspect, but I feel like there's even more to it that I haven't even been able to explore in my own mind. So anyway, I'm getting to a better opinion, but the more you get challenged on something, honestly, the better your opinion becomes about it. So anyway, challenge me on it. Please tell me how I'm wrong, if I'm wrong there, but anyway, I just can't see that, especially related to the arts, that AI or as I read somewhere, that's why I took that, plagiarism machine really like makes any sense. All right, let's get into the media news. We got a lot here, and especially that George R. R. Martin bit. Sorry, I've saved it to last. It's in my notes. I'll miss something if I don't follow my notes, okay? So anyway, first things first, Gandalf, played by Ian McKellen, as we all know and love, apparently he's reprising his role in The Hunt for Gollum. I think I read somewhere that he was like, you know, he's getting up there. He had a spill apparently recently and got injured and took some time off, and so he's like, am I even up to this? I hope he is, because he's Gandalf. Like nobody else is Gandalf. Also though, do we need more Lord of the Rings at this point? We're gonna beat this dead horse, apparently, like Star Wars. So here we are. Anyone that has a big thing, just keep beating the dead horse, because apparently we keep throwing money at it. All right, Josh Brolin apparently has been offered, and this is as much of the news as I have, so it's not probably the best news, offered the role of Hal Jordan in an HBO TV series following the Green Lantern. Hal Jordan is a lot of people's favorite Green Lantern. I only really know him, so he's my favorite by that technicality. But anyway, I think that's cool. I think Josh Brolin makes sense for it. He's got that kind of like gruff, like, I don't know, just like impatient kind of like, let's get this crap done kind of mentality. I don't know, he just seems perfect for it. But again, it's the news that I read was offered. So again, I'm like, how many times do you see like such and such movie could have gone to so-and-so because they were offered it, but they turned it down? That's where we're at right now. Great news. Thank you. All right, apparently this is the fun news. Twilight, because we don't ever have enough Twilight, has an animated series coming to Netflix. Following Midnight Sun, the book that came out in 2020, which apparently follows Edward's perspective of like the whole thing. So it's like an 800-page book or something of like Edward's perspective. I mean, some people might enjoy that. I don't know. I thought the movies were fine. I didn't read the books, but some of them were kind of silly. Some parts of it were silly. It did make me read Dracula's, which if you haven't, you should read Dracula's. Blake Crouch and a bunch of other great authors we're kind of like took Twilight and we're like, we need real actual vampires again, and it's just awesome and nuts. Speaking of, because it's like that time of the year, I guess it's getting there, fall is coming, all this stuff. Beetlejuice has come out, you know. I thought it was funny that the original Beetlejuice really only has Beetlejuice in it. I've said Beetlejuice so many times, I'm amazed he hasn't appeared. But he has Michael Keaton in it for all of like 17 minutes of like the 90-minute movie, which is kind of funny. I remember rewatching it with our kids like recently and being like, so Beetlejuice like isn't even in this at all? Anyway, funny enough. The reviews seem decent. It's kind of like the Ghostbuster ones, like where it's like, yeah, it's fine. We're all gonna forget it very soon. Which I'm like, is that what we're doing? I know I've complained about this so many times now on the channel. I'm sorry if you are sick of hearing this, but like, again, it just felt like we are just remaking it because of money, and that's the only reason, and it just frustrates me. I get it too, because of course, but can we have better reasons for things or come up with new creative things to do? That's what I prefer. All right, speaking of kind of on the same, not really. Beetlejuice is doing fine. Beetlejuice is doing fine. It's Minecraft, the movie trailer came out, and there's a lot of disappointment, it seems like. People are not very happy with it. Kind of like, wow, what are you trying to feed to us here? I think it was John Douglas I saw on Twitter was like, his kids watched it. Jack Black says, hey, I'm Steve. And they were like, no, you're not. Which is kind of funny because like Steve in Minecraft, and I had to look this up, I'll be honest, is kind of iconic. And like Jack Black didn't even like shave his like bushy gray beard to do this. They didn't even like try, it seems like. They're just like, it's Jack Black. Which again, typically makes things fun. I do love Jack Black. He's the greatest part of many movies, and hopefully it'll still be great. You know, you got the other guy who's like super good looking or something or whatever. It's the weird part about this, I thought, was it's called a Minecraft movie instead of the Minecraft movie, which is interesting. It's almost like we're already like kind of distancing ourselves from this. Like, it may or may not be like official even. I thought that was interesting. A Minecraft movie. All right, finally, I've been teasing this. It boggles my mind. So some of these things. Anyway, House of the Dragon, George R. R. Martin, finally, like he's kind of been hinting. He said at one point, I don't look forward to this, but talking about everything that's gone wrong with House of the Dragon, he kind of hinted that a couple posts ago on his Not a Blog. He finally posted his thoughts on the problems with season 2, which have come to, I know there's been like kind of mixed reactions. I've like felt like Mike's book reviews, I thought he said he liked it. A lot of people have said, it seemed to not do quite as well and disappointed a lot of people. But George kind of went off, and he went off in a very polite way. But the funny part is it immediately got taken down. You can assume HBO. I think that's probably a fair assumption, but it is just an assumption. Nobody actually knows. Maybe George took it down immediately and felt bad. But because the internet always remembers, especially with someone like George R. R. Martin, it was immediately internet archived, I think. There might have been other places. I think I've read it on a couple different sources. But essentially, George kind of posts his thoughts about, like, you make changes to the source material. Well, all these things that I've now foreshadowed, you kind of cut off. And so his whole point is, and I didn't get too deep into it, I have read the book, which I famously didn't love because it's so much show and almost zero tell, which is just hard to read. It's just a history book, which some people like. Again, your mileage may vary, whatever. George is just like going, look, you cut off this whole like part that is like, seems like it is at first like, doesn't matter. But eventually it matters. That's how George writes. That's why he's a genius. That's why he's amazing in what he does and why he's done so well for so long. Because he's so good at the foreshadowing that you like don't even notice. And suddenly you're like, oh my gosh, that random thing that he mentioned way over here is like become a major thing. And so he kind of goes into like, well, I don't know how we're going to get, if we've cut off this thing, to over here where you kind of have this important event. How do we get there now? Maybe they'll get there. And he kind of mentions the butterfly effect. Again, I'm not trying to get into super spoilers on this. I just thought it's interesting. He's railed against this before, and I looked it up just about these like TV creators that are like, I'm going to make this my own. And you're like, can you not though? Can you just stick with the source material? And I'm not saying you have to do word for word exact copy. That would also be bad, I think, a lot of times, because they're different milieu, it's like there's writing and there's film, and they're two different things, and you got to portray things in different ways. I like a lot of like what Peter Jackson did to change Lord of the Rings because he had to make it for film. I know that the Tolkiens didn't love that, but I think it's great. But in here, so I get where they have to change things, but it's like when you make major changes and to like, hey, and he kind of mentions, because it was like, for reasons regarding like, we didn't want to hire another child actor or something, that would have been, and it slows production to do that, and we've got all these budgetary constraints, but it's like, but you still like, you might cut something now that creates a bigger budgetary constraint later on, right? Like, so like, do it right. And he's railed against that before, and I know how much he like, it sticks with him. Like, people just try to make it their own, and it's like, can you not? You're not the famous author. And I'm going, and I don't feel like Hollywood's hiring like the best of the best to do writers, to be writers on the shows. I guess you just don't hear about them really, and they're not like the ones becoming famous unless they're bad at it. It's so frustrating, and I get George's frustration, and then for this to immediately be like hidden, again, the internet remembers that's probably a bad move on HBO's part. Again, if they're doing it, maybe they're not. So you got to be careful with that, because people will find ways to be against you, and find that off-putting, as they say. And anyway, I thought I'd just make that clear. I love George R. R. Martin, and I think he needs to finish his crap already, but hey, it's a fair assessment, and I love, like, I felt like he kind of defended the original Game of Thrones show like too much, and I felt like maybe he's like, okay, I'm just gonna speak my mind now, um, because the original show, he like, even the last season where we all generally like, I think overall hated. I think you can kind of almost even put an objective number to that. It was generally disdained and hated. Not everyone, but generally. And he kind of, I never really heard like a bad thing that he said about it. He kind of stayed true, and maybe that's because he had some kind of a contract that he didn't sign for this next one, because he's like, I need to be able to distance myself. But here we are. He's again pointing out the flaws. Sanderson's done this in the Wheel of Time. I love how Sanderson's been pretty open about like, hey, this wasn't my fault on Perrin, right? Like, so it's like, but why do people who are nothing, I'm sorry, compared to these amazing authors, like think that they can do better? It's such hubris. Like, why do you think you can do better? That's insane to me. What are you, some like online reviewer? So anyway, thank you so much for stopping by. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I know I had opinions this time, and I couldn't stop myself. Please, if you want, there are links down below for Kindle book deals. It does support the channel, so anything you can, go link there. It's not like a lot, because they're deals. They're great deals, frankly, on really good books. That's all I do, is I curate this list, and they're fun. So anyway, let me know your thoughts though, and thank you so much for stopping by, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.